Now then, what do we have here? What? Oh God, are they both still screaming? I mean, I guess I'm screaming, Hyder's questioning, but still. Well, this isn't gonna work. In here, folks. Welcome to my mind, and I know what you're thinking. Pretty cool, I've got a dark mode, right? Evidently, I'm in such shock over seeing whatever the heck that thing is that I literally can't stop yelling. Kind of, well, really annoying, honestly. But thankfully, my self-conscience is still kicking. And self-conscious I am. Is this first or second-hand embarrassment I'm feeling? Anyway, I know what you're here for, right? Games? We play those here, usually. Well, we're supposed to, anyway, but these bozos are kinda stuck like this. Okay, I guess we're gonna have to improvise something in here for now. Let's see, here we go. Looks like I have a box right here labeled Break-in Cases of Extreme Shock. Let's give it a go, eh? What the? This is just Kirby's Adventure. I can't be serious, right? This was really my best plan? How stupid am I? Kirby! Repeat that name 3 times and you too can make an ancient reference. This little pink ball of Lovecraftian specialty has been around for forever, always finding himself as a top dog in Nintendo's pantheon of IPs. Pick just about any Kirby game and you'll find it talked about as one of the best games on the system. Planet Robobot, Superstar, Return to Dreamland. This dude knows how to walk into a party, say Poyo, and walk back out with an entourage. I don't think anybody hates Kirby. Hell, I love the little guy. We have so much in common. We're pink, have no observable nose. Maybe a third thing. It's a series that doesn't really fire off missteps often, if ever. So even if they're not someone's thing, I don't think anyone will realistically bitch about having to play one. They're an easy time sink, and even easier to beat usually, making for great casual games when you're just looking to unwind, which I assume is what led me to making this Kirby's Adventure care package. I don't even remember doing this, but why not? And since we're starting from the beginning of the series, we may as well do some background. Wait, no we're not. Adventure was the second game. Wait a minute, I got this. Wow. Yeah, sure, I can do this now, why not? You can probably make up copies of Kirby's Dream Land in your head too if you try, dumbass. Kirby as a series first got its puffball rolling in May 1990, when a 19-year-old game designer at HAL Laboratory, some young random kid by the name of, Masahiro Sakurai, pitched his Game Boy game concept about a cute pink character who would suck up enemies and spit them out to attack. His vision was to make an accessible game that anyone could pick up, enjoy, and not end up overwhelmed by the difficulty. And the pitch went great. It got a green light for whenever Sakurai could get started, meaning that soon the masses would be playing Popopo of the Spring Breeze. That's certainly a name. Scratch that. The masses would be playing Twinkle Pope. Nope. Never mind, the masses just wouldn't be playing the game. HAL Laboratory at this time was kinda struggling for funds, and their initial plan was to self-publish Popopo of the Twinkle Twinkle Twunk, but by the end of 1991, with the game all set to be released early next year, they had just 26,000 advanced copies ordered by retailers. I don't think it takes a strong mathematician to work out that this is bad. Desperate for anything to go well, HAL came to Shigeru Miyamoto, who took one look at it and said, yeah, we'll make this work, but you're changing that stupid-ass name. With some retooling, a spit shine, and the main character donning the name Kirby, based both on a list of ideas from Nintendo of America and the lawyer John Kirby, who defended the company against Universal when they sued over Donkey Kong's likeness to King Kong, Kirby's Dream Land would not only release, but soar on its way to selling 5 million units. This put it as the 9th best-selling game on the entire system, beating the likes of Link's Awakening, Yoshi, and I know this next one is near and dear to all of our hearts, please try to be brave about this, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Duel Stories. I know, it's hard to think Kirby beat that. It's even harder to think that this wasn't the best-selling Yu-Gi-Oh! Game on the Game Boy. But with all the preamble out of the way, why am I even talking about Dreamland in a video when I'm here for Kirby's Adventure? Well, that's real simple. Even if it's metaphysically, I'm not gonna start a retrospective of a big series off with the second game. Especially when you consider that Kirby's Dreamland is like half of what a Kirby game would go on to be, which isn't me saying it's a bad time, it's just really simple. The story goes like this. King Dedede, this penguin with the sickest threads of all time, one day decides to be a big prick, so he invades Dreamland, steals all of the people's food, as well as their 5 sparkling stars that function as their power source. Kirby is a resident of Dreamland on the planet Popstar. Kirby doesn't appreciate not one goddamn bit of this shit, and decides to go beat everyone who even kinda knows King Dedede to death in order to get the food back. Kirby makes it to the king's castle, spits all over him, and returns the food back to the people of Dreamland, ending Kirby's Dreamland. That's it. We checked all the boxes for a story. Dedede's an asshole, Kirby's bloodthirsty, I might not be wearing pants right now, all your standard stuff really. Dreamland is a 2D platformer where you run from room to room defeating enemies in order to make your way to a boss fight at the end of each stage. Kirby moves at a pretty jaunty pace, with a jump that's like acceptable, if not unremarkable. Of course, jumping once has never been Kirby's thing. With a gulp of air, Kirby can take to the sky and float around, flitting through areas with a flap of his arms, forever. This makes platforming a pretty basic affair, as any jump that seems just a bit too dicey can just be ignored instead. The good news here is Sakurai's a pretty decent game designer and recognized that platforming wasn't going to be that interesting if levels were super spacious all the time, so stages often incorporate more cramped corridors and a decent amount of enemies per area. You can still float around to avoid obstacles, but it does limit your ability to just pretend there is no game happening, as you'll have to dodge or combat enemies and obstacles to avoid taking a hit. Granted, easily skippable segments of the stages still happen occasionally, but on the brain dead scale, it's more of a really intense concussion than a full-on lobotomy. Floating like this also provides you with a reliable projectile in this puff of air you spit out, which will kill most regular enemies in one hit. Of course, this isn't the only option for attacking, as when Kirby inhales an enemy, he can spit them back out as a faster, longer-range projectile than the air puff, at the cost of not being able to fly while the enemy is in his mouth. This is all enemies are used for in Dreamland, and anyone familiar with the series, but not Dreamland for some reason, will probably be a little bit surprised by that. You do get a couple other options when swallowing certain things, like a piercing bomb shot, this mint leaf for the boss fight against Kabula, or this screen nuke microphone, but most combat in Dreamland is as simple as swallow an enemy, or hit it with one attack to move past. But jumping back a sec to bosses, I do think these are more or less the highlight of the game. As mentioned previously, each stage ends with a boss, and all of them present a different challenge to you as you attempt to take them down. You get some iconic guys in here too, like Wispy Woods and Krakow, who would go on to be Kirby mainstays. Of course, Wispy Woods has always been an easy bum, bit of a rite of passage more than a real fight, but you know, it's nice to see the tree, gotta love the tree. King Dedede's fight is shockingly intense given he has twice as much health as you, and pretty much every other fight in the game doesn't even have that, but Kabula is my pick for both the best moment and boss of Dreamland. It's the one time the game really switches up the formula, becoming an aerial shooter where you navigate Kirby around an onslaught of cannon fire as you fire puffs of, I guess, minty air at the blimp's huge health bar, so you can't just tank shots and expect to beat it before it beats you. It's the most difficult moment the game has, because it's the only difficult moment the game has. This whole game is pretty trivial, easy to understand, exactly what Sakurai was aiming for, at the cost of not being particularly engaging. You're never going to be challenged by anything going on here, save for Kabula and maybe Dedede, because everything is, purposely, very easy. Combat isn't going to raise your heart rate, you can comfortably navigate basically every platforming task, since even with close corridors you can fly around most dangers, and even if you were to get roughed up by something, you'd have to try to avoid the copious health pickups and extra lives dotted around each stage in order to even be in any danger at all. There's just no threat of failure, and because I was just so stacked on extra lives as the game continued that there was no chance I was ever losing, I gotta be honest, I think I got a little bored. That being said, that isn't actually important. You want to guess why? Have you noticed I've not really discussed any of the individual stages to this point? Thought that was strange at all for me? I mean, it's not that they're badly designed. We touched on that earlier. I'll tell you why. This game has 5 levels. And it's not like we're talking big, expansive areas here. You're gonna beat these all in a few minutes apiece. This whole game runs out to less than 30 minutes to beat. Technically an hour if you consider the extra game as a separate thing, but that's more or less a hard mode after beating the first run, and that's that's not really something I'm gonna consider. It's something designed for a behemoth with 4 AA batteries. So yeah, it makes sense that the runtime is pretty concise since there's no saves or anything. But coming back to this now, what does my boredom with a 30-minute game matter? Maybe if I were a consumer buying a Game Boy game, I'd be bothered by this, but do I really have the audacity to get upset about a platformer that's this short? No, of course not. This game is simple? Yeah, no duh, man. I've played Flash games that took longer to beat. So, Kirby's Dream Land, it's fine. If you liked what you saw here, what's the harm in playing it? You're going to get in and out of this game pretty damn fast, and even with the whole thing being kinda whatever, this is one of those games where there's nothing really wrong with it. The presentation is top-notch for a Game Boy game, producing some adorable visuals, silly cutscenes, and some fantastic music for the system. Shout out Float Island's track for being my favorite song in the whole thing, and also the fact that there's a game over jingle. I don't think anyone has ever actually heard it before, given the game, but hey, maybe someday it'll be cause for alarm. The game itself is just so harmless that I can't expect anyone to have a bad time here. Dreamland is perfectly acceptable in the state it's in. Easy to recommend if you just want to add a game to your bucket list that you can kick off just as fast, but also playing it makes me feel like Kirby's face, so I think we can move on. Well, Hyder, let's get to Kirby's adventure. You're not here. I'm not doing this alone. Hang on. Hey, buddy, it's time to stop our screaming.
I'm Spot.
Those are some choice words, but I'm glad you're here too, buddy. Anyway, you ready? Cool. Here we go.